alleged mastermind was probably involved in the murder, and you have his messages that show how he was also operating inside of this captured state. So in terms of narrative storytelling, that was the idea. And if you look closely, actually scene by scene, we rotate between story of Jan and Martina and the true crime, story of the political situation in Slovakia, and it goes back and forth, and that's the way, I hope we succeeded in telling both these stories in a way that was faithful to Jan and Martina and the work that the journalists did, and to the story of the history and current state of Slovak politics.
Tomas, when you see with your colleagues that 70 terabytes of data, how did you select? What was your method? How could you begin this kind of work? And how did you decide what to publish and what not?
70 terabytes of data is a lot. For your imagination, you need at least a truck to transport 70 terabytes of data when you put them on the hard drives. So it's basically an elephant that you need to eat. And how do you eat an elephant? Piece by piece. It was simply impossible for any single person to go through the file. We know nowadays that we are not the only ones actually who got the file leaked to them, but we were the only ones who were able to eat the elephant. And the only way we could do it was through cooperation. Actually, the investigative center of Jan Kuciak that I have the honor to work for nowadays was started in 2018. It was started because there is this YouTube video of Jano. He's giving a lecture because, among other things, he was also a lecturer and a PhD student at the university in Nitra in Slovakia. He was teaching like the next generation of journalists. And at one moment he is lamenting that there are these centers like Investigace in Czech Republic, which Pavla Hosova, who you've seen, is the leader of, and OCCRP internationally, and ICIJ, and all of these like organizations that are focused on cooperation between journalists. Because investigative journalism is not easy and it's not cheap. And if you do not cooperate among, like between the newsrooms, it is impossible to sustain it. And you can see it in many countries. I think you have seen it here in Hungary as well. It might be one of the problems, that it's economically not viable to have strong investigative journalists. So what do? You say, all right, screw it. We will not have perfect investigative stories that will be exclusive and only our paper will sell. No, we will cooperate on that. So that was Jano's idea to do that kind of thing in Slovakia, but our egos were too big until his murder. We were not able to go beyond ourselves. But after that, we were like, just, let's do it. Let's start the center. And this is how we actually started working on the whole Koštanec library. So it was not just like me and the two other journalists that you have seen. There was at least 10 newsrooms from across Slovakia. Slovakia is a small country, so 10 is a big number. And we all went there daily and looked through all of those data. Like the police file itself, just that had 18,000 pages. I don't know how the judges do it, but we also just split it and everybody read a little bit. How did we choose what to publish and what not to? There was a lot of juicy stuff in there. There was a lot of dick pics. I have seen more penises than I've ever read in my life. And sometimes, almost never it is worth it to publish things like that. Almost never. But if it's a speaker of the parliament, the second most important person in the country who is sexting and exchanging these very erotic messages is Alena Žužová, a murderer, nowadays already convinced murderer, then it might be worth it to actually publish such a thing. So it's walking on the edge, what to publish, what not to. In the end, the only really important question for us always is it in public interest or not?
Matt, it's not your first film killed journalist. You made another one a few years ago about Belarusian journalist who was killed in Ukraine. The film is called Killing Power. How do you see the differences or similarities between Ukraine and Slovakia? Is it a different world, or do you find anything parallel?
To some extent, I think they are two different worlds. This is kind of a contrarian point of view, but in the last 5 years, I think 3 investigative journalists have been murdered in the European Union for their work. At least in the European Union, the alleged masterminds have been charged. They haven't been convicted yet, but they've been charged. If we look at the case, Pavel Sarnecki was murdered in a car bomb in 2016 in Kiev, Ukraine. If we look at places like Ukraine, Russia, how many journalists have been killed in Russia in the past 10 years, and never once has the alleged mastermind been charged? And I'm not trying to be overly optimistic about the EU, but I think it's important to talk about the strength of democratic values and why they're so important, and why institutions and the rule of law is important. Because at least in the European Union, we have come to a situation where we can, you will not get away with it. There's no impunity, as opposed to countries like Russia that have no rule of law, that are dictatorships. And that's one major difference. Another major difference is in Ukraine, it was more of the wild east in terms of investigating and the concerns about safety. In Slovakia, after the murder of Jan, I think we all felt much safer making this film. I mean, I hope that's not being naive, but there is something, there's a definitive difference.
During the films, you heard the audience noises. There was some people laughing or shouting. But in the end of the film, the sociologist guy said that the EU funds should not be given to Slovakia. It's a really.
I have noticed that, like, the noise. I looked around.
It's a really hot topic in Hungary.
I know.
Months. Is it hot topic in Slovakia also, or is it just accidentally thought sentence?
No, I think it's not like accidental. It really was part of the discussion at the time, but it's not anymore because unfortunately we have moved on in Slovakia to a large degree, and I'm not sure if in the right direction. You see, let me put it this way. After the 2020 election, there was a complete change of direction in Slovakia. We got a new prime minister. All the parties in the government changed, like it was blank state. But exactly as this sociologist, famous one, said, it turns out that these guys who were elected into power, and they were mostly elected on the platform of getting rid of the mafia state and reforming the police and the justice. They don't know what to do. They are absolutely incapable, and that is even worse than being evil. In this situation, being incompetent is worse than being evil, because people are just fed up. You know, they started in 2020 with big majority in the parliament. They had the constitutional majority. They could do anything, and they didn't do nothing. And right now they are ruling as a minority government, even though their government split up. So people are fed up, a bit hopeless, and the question is basically what is going to happen with our country. Like, we have been on this crossroads since 2018, but right now I believe this is the end of the crossroads, and this is where we will decide what to do next. Because at the next election, who do you vote for? Do you still vote for these anti-Fico, anti-mafia guys who have proven to be absolutely incapable? Or do you say, fuck it, mafia is better than chaos?
Maybe you want to add, just to play devil's advocate, what's former Prime Minister Robert Fico and former Prime Minister Pellegrini, where do they stand in the political mile now?
Well, Fico has basically just completely moved to the extreme. He's officially leftist, but sometimes you couldn't distinguish what he's saying from what the fascists are saying. Literally, like, he's very pro-Putin, anti-Ukraine, anti-refugees, all of these things. The mafia, the captured state, all of these things, they are not in the agenda anymore. All we talk about recently in Slovakia are gay rights, LGBTQ plus rights, refugees. You know, Soros. Again, you laugh because you asked about those noises from the audience. I heard it. You laughed when you heard Soros for the first time when Fico said it. Do you know what we did for the first time when we heard Fico said it? We laughed. All the country laughed. Everybody laughed because we heard it before. It's so 90s. It's old. It's stupid. But if you repeat it enough times, there is going to form a portion of people who will start to believe it. Yes, Smer did split into two parties. Right now we have Hlas and we have Smer. Hlas are the guys around this fake prime minister, Pellegrini, and the second one is Smer. Right now in the polls, Hlas is number 1 and Smer is, I think, number 2 or 3. So the question is, who will Pellegrini in the end after the next election, which may come sooner, maybe later, but 1.5 years latest, who will he choose? Will he choose to ally with his old boss, Fico, or will he choose somebody else? And that's basically the roll of the dice right now.
Matt, as far as I know, you were born in the USA, you studied at Berkeley, and you are dealing with Eastern European mafia states. And I'm not sure, should I be happy if you will ever make a film on Hungary or not. But maybe that will be one of your projects in the next. Why are you interested in this region, and why do you live in Bucharest?
To answer, most people are very concerned that I live in Hollywood and just flew in to make this film, but that's not how it worked. I've been living in Romania for the last 10 years, and I work for an organization called the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, and I'm in charge of their video platform. And I've been doing investigative work in Central and Eastern Europe for these last 10 years. The easy way to answer this question is because I learned Romanian long ago, and I wanted to make documentaries, and I already had the language skills, and the founder of the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project is Romanian. The more honest answer is when I finished my graduate degree, I was offered this opportunity to start this video program. I wasn't necessarily an investigative journalist. I kind of looked at myself as just a storyteller, or that was my skill. But I moved to Romania then I met a girl. And we were together for 4 or 5 years, but I stayed on. And even though it's a lot of people, especially Hungarians, might like to make some jokes about Romania, I very much like it. It's a country that I love. It's a region that I love. It's meaningful work for me, and I wish I had a better answer to that. But I think sometimes it's nice to just be honest about things. Maybe I thought I'd be there 1 or 2 years, but now it's my life. And doing these types of documentaries are my life. But I will never do another story on a murdered journalist. This is my second. It's not. I don't want that to be my beat. How I ended up doing the Jan Kuciak story is, after I did the story on Pavel Sheremet, some of his friends and colleagues had invited me to the village where he was murdered to try to do some, to help, because in the previous documentary we used a lot of forensic analysis of CCTV footage to identify suspects and find holes in the police investigation. So that was my initial entry into this project. And it was there that I became very close with one of Jan's friends. Her name is Eva Kubayanova, who ended up working with Pavla at Investigacije. And that's, it's the story that came to me. And then when I realized it wouldn't just be the story of the tragic murder of Jan, but we could put it into the context of a completely corrupted, captured state, it became a story that I wanted to tell.
Hamarosan önök is kérdezhetnek, hogy ne csak én kérdezzek. Gondolkodjam kérdésen, nem muszáj angolul feltenni, magyarul is lehet, és majd fordítunk. I just told the audience that they will also have the chance to ask you. But still, people are thinking about questions. I just wanted to ask you, Tomas, that I think there are some very strong similarities between the Hungarian and Slovakian politics.
It was inevitable you asked this.
But I think there's an interesting structural difference. As we have seen in the film, in Slovakia there are some oligarchs who moved as the puppets of politicians and other authorities. In Hungary, I think that the politicians are stronger and they running the state as their private business. What do you think? How was the evaluation? How could be these strong men became so strong that they are able to buy up parties, authorities, police boss? Is the story beginning with a privatization or how?
Well, first of all, I never claimed to be an expert on Hungary, but I did live here for a year a few years ago. I lived in Budapest, and the way I understand it, the basic difference between Slovak captured state and Hungarian captured state, because you guys are captured state whether you like it or not, is that Hungary is quite open about being actually a dictatorship. What I would classify Hungarian regime as would be electoral authoritarian regime or liberal democracy or whatever you want to call it. It's not really a democracy, even though you do hold elections, but the elections do not matter. And it's, in a way, very Putinist model. You have a strong man who controls the oligarchs and tells them what to do. And if they want to stay rich and powerful, they have to listen. It's same as in Russia when Putin says, we need to make Olympics, you will build an, I don't know, freaking swimming pool or something. The guy will build a swimming pool because he knows he has to, because the boss said so. Slovakia was different, and it was very important little detail in the movie. Somewhere in the beginning, somebody, I don't know, it was Vašečka, the sociologist, or who said that they were even so powerful, they were able to keep these on the surface, it looked like perfect liberal democracy.
To create the illusion.
To create the illusion. Yeah, that's amazing. That's exactly that. I'm going to be honest with you guys. We, Democrats in Slovakia, did have a few years ago this little bit condescending view of Hungary, like, oh, how could they let this happen? We would never let that happen to us. Well, screw us. We literally didn't know what we are living in. It was completely hidden. As Paula said in the movie many times, and other people, we knew that Slovakia is corrupted. We knew people are taking bribes. We had no idea it goes that deep. It wouldn't, before Jan's murder, it wouldn't surprise me if I knew that a judge of the Constitutional Court is corrupted. It wouldn't surprise me. But had I known that he is part of the organized criminal group, where the president of the police, the president of the NACA, the prosecutor general, special prosecutor, all are part of one system, that would shock me. And that's what we learned only after the murder. Partially also thanks to this big leak. I think it's important to know that in the 70 terabytes of data of Martina Kusnirova, it was not just about finding the truth about the murder, and I think even more crucially, it was important to find out the truth about the country itself, because that's where we found so many clues and evidence that all of these people are not just corrupted, but also cooperating with each other. Politicians in this kind of system, that Slovakia was, in this hidden captured state, are not the strong men as Putin or Orban or I don't know who, Kaczynski, because they are just part of the system. They have their role, and they are just like a clock in a clockwork. And it just all runs perfectly smoothly until one of them fucks up and tells, let's kill a journalist. And then the crucial question is, how will the society react? Will the other journalists, because Kusnirova said this many times before he murdered Jan, I will kill a journalist and then everybody else will shut up. Will we shut up? Or will we start to scream? We started to scream.
Szóval, csak kérdés lenne. És nem tudom, mi a legjobb módszer, de talán ha visszatérünk.
My question is, you mentioned someone else got given the data. Who else got the leak? And I didn't realize Kusnirova said this was novelty to me, that he actually said this, that he would give it.
I'm not completely sure if they got the same kind of data, but there was a lot of other like daily newspapers in Slovakia which were publishing stories from Trima. For example, one of the judges in Slovakia even published all of Trima, which is something that we would never do because it contained all the, sexting, dick pics, all this stuff that is embarrassing to Kusnirova, but we didn't want to embarrass him. We would just publish parts because we wanted to publish the parts which were important. And also there are in Slovakia, unfortunately, media which we would not cooperate with because they are owned by the oligarchs.
Itt volt még azért járkálok, hogy a mikrofont tudjuk adni.
I noticed that among criminals are really, so there are many Hungarian names, and especially the ones who done the dirty job. Do you see any reason behind it?
You're letting me do the dirty work. They have Hungarian sounding names because they are Hungarian. Why? I don't think there is a particular reason for that actually. It's not like the southern Slovakia is It's a bit more like Wild West than the rest of the country, but not really. You find that kind of like wildish parts of the country, also in the eastern Slovakia, where there is the Ukrainian border nearby, in the north, where there is too far from Bratislava, like in the mountains. You can find this kind of people like in all parts of Slovak society. I think it's just a coincidence a little bit, because Bratislava is close to this Žitný Ostrov, this part of Slovakia where a lot of Hungarian minority lives. And Kočner happened to know Zsuzsova, who is from Hungarian minorities. She's from Komárno or somewhere. So it's just a coincidence to some degree.
Just to add something, I saw in a news article that there was a Hungarian presidential candidate that actually liked Zsuzsova's profile. Is there a presidential candidate that used to be a former porn star?
You mean in Hungary?
Yeah. Oh. You can see it, someone noticed it, you can see, but who is it? Kuciak.
He's a businessman who ran porn sites.
But you know, Hungarian, maybe this is interesting for you. There are like, I would say, Hungarian part of this whole oligarchic system. And it's mostly connected to Josef Brhel, which is one of the oligarchs, and then people who I will not name directly, but they, for example, might own a raffinery in Slovakia, which is connected to MOL.
So there are many questions.
I would like to ask it from Matt that how you could convince the defense lawyer, this asshole guy, and why you decided to put it into the movie finally.
Well, first of all, I think the movie is much better because we included it in the film. It would have been very hard to tell the story. You know, we have the lawyers for the families representing the prosecution side. I didn't think he was going to agree to cooperate, but I was very, very honest with him. His first concern is that I was going to focus on his communication with his client in the Frima, but I told him I want to be honest with you. I'm going to show the prosecution side of the case, and I want to have your side of the case. And I said, I'm not rooting for you to lose. The film will be better if you represent your client as best as you possibly can. And I feel that I was honest with him and I was true to that. And he told me off, he said this is the first documentary he's ever done, and he said it might be the last. But I think he trusts me. I hope he feels that it's actually important to me that we didn't take advantage of him, because I think his you know, he represented his client, and in the first instance, he represented his client and got a not guilty verdict, and I didn't want to do a disservice to him or the documentary by treating him in a way that could be considered careless or condescending.
If I may, I really like that you actually managed to convince Para to talk to you. Every time I tried to convince him to talk to me, I was not or basically any other journalist in Slovakia. But it is very important also that you have decided to include those objections that they have, the defense, because they might seem minor, and most of them are, but it shows really that this case is not as completely clear-cut, even though I'm also 100% sure that Kočner did it. But it's exactly as Paula said. In the democracy, if we want to renew democracy in Jano's name, we need to protect also some kind of principles. And that is also the presumption of innocence. Even though we might hate Kushner, he also deserves a fair trial. And if the evidence is not strong enough to send somebody for life to prison, we cannot do that. And some principles are more important than Kushner.
Itt ennek a sornak a közepén.
Yeah, so I would like to sort of go back to your point. What is important is society's reaction to what's going on. And as far as I'm concerned, the big difference between Slovakia and Hungary, that Slovak society managed twice since '93 to derail the attempt of capturing the state. Once in the case of Mecsár, and it's again now. And I think for us in Hungary, as we just kind of think what should we do with this government in Orbán, the task is getting bigger and bigger and daunting. So my question is, what do you think is in Slovak society that sort of, manages to derail the power, the government? What do you do differently to us?
I think that to a large degree, it's maybe because, I'm gonna say very simplistically, but you guys had it a little bit easy in the beginning, in the 90s and 2000s, and we did not. And Mečiar kind of vaccinated us. He was exactly what Orbán is, and even a little bit worse. And it was possible to get rid of him through, even though the system was rigged just as it is in Hungary, but it was possible. But we had to learn to cooperate. And that's actually the same for the both cases, both in the 1998 and in 2018, 1920. We had to decide to cooperate, even people who did not really like each other, maybe people who liked gay rights and people who did not like gay rights, and lefties, righties, we did not let them to split us along some virtual made-up lines, and that was very important. And also, what is also very important is that we had media, and that is more important than one might imagine, but having strong and really independent media is absolutely crucial. You might think that in this day and age when you have Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, Instagram, all of these sites, that you don't really need news agencies or media to provide you with the information that you can find it online. But online you can find all kinds of information, and very little of it is truthful. So without strong and independent media, it's very, very hard.
Can I have the next question?
Igen, emlékezés a következő. Jó.
I don't want to ask anything, I just want to comment something that this topic was very interesting to me, because in 2015 I spent half a year in Slovakia and I was working for a company which was a little bit foggy, the background of the country, because they advertised themselves. They are research and development and renewable energy, but it was probably based on the speculation or EU grants. And some of it was in southern Slovakia, and one of the owner was a member of the Most party. It was also a politician. And the big owner of the company was living in Kolárovo, where they found the murders. And it was very sad to witness that it was a kind of, even in a smaller value, that it was the same. It was a speculation of corruption and speculation of EU grants. And it's very sad to witness, and fortunately I left them.
Thank you very much. So the question.
So one remark that has more to do with the investigation, but it's very unusual, I believe, that this middleman, he was told who ordered the crime by this lady, I forgot the name. And that's very unusual, I think, that, like a crime crime like that, those who are on the side of ordering the crime, they would reveal it to those who are doing the crime. So what do you think on that? And my other question was, I have to remember that. So after you answer this, I'll remember my other question.
But I don't think any of them were very competent. When they drove the car to the crime scene, they didn't even change the license plate. That would have been one of the simplest things to do, to throw investigators off of your path. We didn't talk about this in the film, but the reason how they originally got to the assassin is because one of the assassins used his personal phone to call the burner phone of the driver. They weren't that competent, but I think at the time there was a feeling of impunity where I'm not sure that, I believe personally that Kusnir and Jujol were probably involved in a lot of similar criminal enterprises and got away with it for a long, long time. I think a lot of people got away with it for a long, long time. So there was, it didn't matter if they were careless. And I think that train of thought, or that prevailing thought, allowed them to be a little bit careless through the murder. And even after the murder, I think it comes through in the film, Kusnir was still very arrogant. I don't think he thought he was ever going to get caught. And even the confrontation between Zhuzheva and the intermediary, I mean, they both had to agree to sit through that. I think she had enough confidence that she could get herself out of this, that she was willing to put herself in a situation that most defense lawyers would say never, ever do. But again, this is my personal opinion.
Exactly. Like, what you need to understand about Kusnir is that none of his crimes, not just the murder, but all of the frauds that he committed, it was never very sophisticated. Like, he likes to brag that he is super intelligent and that he had this IQ test and that he should be part of the Mensa. I don't believe he should, because it was usually very, very easy, very stupid fraud. Like this thing that he's in the prison right now for, he literally just took a piece of paper and just written on it that TV Markiza, one of the biggest private TVs in Slovakia, owes me 20 million euros and faked a signature. This kind of primitive. But you know what? It got through. The first time it got into the courtroom, the judge decided that yes, this is correct, and TV Markiza owes Mr. Kusnir 20 million. Because he had that kind of power over the judges and over the judiciary.
Even worse than I thought.
Yeah, it's even worse. And another thing, like why would Zhuzhova tell Andrushko the name of Kusnir is because Kusnir was this powerful, and everybody kind of knew that he is this powerful. The name instills fear. And Andrushko, he claims that he didn't do it actually for the money, but he did it because he didn't want to get murdered himself. And I don't fully believe him, but I kind of do, because the money is not, I don't know, maybe I would imagine that if somebody is going to kill somebody, at least it's going to cost a lot of money. But this was 50,000 euros. You can buy like, 2 second-hand Passats for that. And this is the price of human life. And the third point I wanted to make is, I kind of believe Andrushko, but also don't. Just because he is a crown witness for us, doesn't mean that he needs to tell truth all the time. What is important is that he is very precisely and in all of his testimonies from the very beginning, repeating the same things that he didn't have anywhere else to know about, and that is the photos. There are those photos that were taken by the team that was hired, and this is something we know, that everybody admits that it was hired by Kuciak. They took photos of Jana, and this is the same photos that Zsuzsa showed to Andrushka.
Actually, Martina Kusnirovan's lawyer denies that fact and says that the former agent was operating as a maverick, and that Kushner had nothing to do with it. It's why it's not brought up in the film. Anyway, but yes, everyone knows.
We do have even better evidence than the prosecutor on this.
The 70 terabytes information that was linked to you, how is it possible that the police didn't seize it? Like I've seen police files in your movie, and I would guess in these cases the police would take it and not enable you to use them.
Well, what if there's nothing illegal about it? Sorry, I'm not playing devil's advocate. There's, according to Slovak law, there is nothing illegal about the case file coming into possession of the journalist. Is that?
Yes, and also, how would they take it if they don't know where it is?
Exactly, it was
And I am by no way obliged. The police can take me right now, put me into handcuffs, take me to the police station, and they can ask me where is this file located, and I will tell them, based on the Slovak press law, I am actually obliged not to tell you, because this is my source, and I need to protect my source.
Because you said about these two choices for the Czech people. One choice is to choose mafia, the other choice is to choose the people who are incompetent. But you as a journalist, what is your choice? What is the proposition for you?
Well, I as a journalist can never tell you who would I vote for. You know, I will answer it this way. After all of this, after this movie and all of these discussions, it may sound very bleak and very pessimistic. The truth that none of the Slovak journalists will tell you about themselves is that they are actually optimists. Because if I was not an optimist, I would not work as a journalist in Slovakia anymore, I would just emigrate. I do believe
The person is involved in telling people about the election, about people, about cases. So my question is basically not about who you personally vote like a name, but what is the future? What is the... Because all of these people are corrupted. You know, the power and money corrupt people everywhere. Not just, we are not talking about Eastern country, we can talk about Eastern mafia, but we can talk about Western mafia. And the corruption is everywhere. So my question is, you know, what is the path forward? This is the question.
Yeah, I was actually getting to that. So, the path forward is a path that is not a revolution. Unfortunately, we have seen, even in Slovakia, that revolutions do not work because they have this tendency to go around. That's why they are called revolutions. But there is evolution. Like, if you take Slovakia in the 1990s, that is the era when the son of the president was kidnapped by the Secret Service, when people were blowing up in the streets with their cars, and mafia was shooting each other in the streets of Bratislava. Then we take 2000s, 2010s, that didn't happen anymore, but you have seen what was going on. And I would argue, yes, it was horrible, absolutely horrible. It did cost at least 2 young people their lives, and possibly more. But was it better than the 90s? I think yes. What is ahead of us? Ahead of us is going to be, I believe, a society which is going to be still corrupted, which is still going to be not very well managed. The policies will be not very good, but it will be better than it was during the Fico's reign. It's not going to be perfect. Maybe Fico will even return to power. And I actually expect him to. I expect that it is possible that Pellegrini and Fico, they will form a government together, and Fico will be part of the government, but he will not be the strongest part of the government anymore. We had that actually happen with Mečiar. Mečiar lost in 1998, but then in 2006 he returned into government. But he was a junior partner, and then history forgot about him. I expect the same thing will happen to Fico. And the future will not be perfect, but it will be somehow a little bit better. And we just need to keep doing our jobs as a civil society, as journalists, as policemen, prosecutors, to make the life in that country a little bit better.
Let other people have the opportunity to ask, because we are running out of time.
I will just really close it this way, that the possibility is either this, and accept that it's going to be like this, and try to elect the best people you can, or there is another path, and that is that we become another Hungary.
Jól láttam a végén, hogy lefelelték a védőügyvédet is, és igen, akkor mi?
Why was Para on trial? The lawyer of that guy.
Why Para was charged?
Yes.
He might be better equipped to answer this, but he was being charged with, they call it forming an organized crime group or operating within an organized crime group because of this system with, I don't want to get into the names, but Bola. He was the oligarch that was supposedly controlling the police.
The MMA fighter.
The MMA fighter. And he was working, he wasn't just advising Kushner, he was also advising other parts of this criminal network. And they considered him to be kind of like the conciliator of the criminal network. Kind of like the, I don't want to just use an easy metaphor, like in The Godfather, the lawyer that was advising how the family should operate. Correct me if I'm a little bit.
That's very good.
Here, Professor question.
Yes, actually I would have two questions. Where can we see the movie in the future? Because I think it should be, I would be really glad if it would be accessible for people.
I really hope I mean, when you make a film, you want as many people as possible to see it. I think it's a little bit early. In Slovakia, its intended public release is the 5-year anniversary of the murders in February of 2023, and it will show in Slovakia and Czech Republic, unless they try to stop it. I think it'll have a wide theatrical release. Beyond that, I think it's a little bit premature. I mean, I would love for it to play, but maybe the streamers. When I say streamers, that could be Netflix or HBO or whatever the other ones, Amazon, Hulu, but it's too early to say.
So fingers crossed.
Thank you.
I also understand that no more documentary on a journalist's death. That's fine, and we all wish not to have one. So how about a documentary on how the Hungarian free media was sliced up, and that's the reason why we don't have media, and the public opinion is completely taken
There are some Hungarians are some of the best filmmakers in the world. I think a Hungarian filmmaker is probably better equipped to do that film than myself. But if there's a way in, I will never, since it doesn't have to do with anything involving a murder journalist, if I find a way in, that could be interesting. But I would rather, I mean, the Hungarian filmmaking community is a lot more creative than me. I would rather see them do something and watch someone else talk about that film in a film festival.
And I would argue that it's not really truth that there is no more free media in Hungary. Like, you are not as hopeless as you think. You know, maybe there are not like big ones that there used to be, but there are still some that are struggling and fighting, and honestly, whether they survive or not is up to you guys.
Thank you. We have very short time. One short question, please.
like to ask the director, don't get it wrong, your documentary is brilliant, but I would like to ask, why didn't you open more this Italian mafia, this non-refugee? What was the reason?
One more time about the Italian mafia?
Yeah, why that?
Well, storytelling is very, very difficult because that was what brought people to the streets, and that was what brought Jan and Pavla together. But it turned out not to be the case, and so it had to be explained. And it was shocking that the Prime Minister's special security case special was a business member with Indrangheta. But in terms of storytelling, I tried to keep that as brief as possible, so I didn't confuse the viewer to give them the expectation that this was going to be a hit by the Indrangheta. So it was more of a purposeful idea to keep it as low as possible, so as not to destroy expectations or not to get people mixed up, like maybe it was Kushner or maybe it was the Italian mafia. So that's the rationale why.
So really thank you very much for your patience.